Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with Savage Unfiltered Podcast, TheLibertyBeacon.com, and I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and an occasional guest type podcast. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! This is ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, Season 1, Episode 12, and it's going to be a bit different and off the wall. As this is the weekend before 9/11, I am not going to write another full piece regarding remembering and honoring those lost and those who have left behind and potentially dealing with survivor's guilt. I'd also written a piece regarding honoring the fallen from Memorial Day so that we don't forget them. Please check out that piece, as well as the 4th of July pieces, part 1 and 2, remembering our freedoms and our God-given rights after the 4th of July. With 9/11 coming up, this being right before that, I just want to reflect on those past articles, those past shows, and this show itself. I will be having a discussion with Ed Bonderenka of WAAM Radio, as well as others. With Ed, we will be touching on the fact that 9/11 is indeed not a holiday. Memorial Day is, of course, a holiday, but holiday being derived from the term holy day. These aren't celebrations, though. They are somber, fond remembrances of those lost and those who fight to protect our freedoms. And my book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Remember, terrorism can happen anytime, any place. It's not just a big city issue. Like, for instance, the mass shootings last year. I have a set of notes here, if you can hear it rustling, as Rush Limbaugh would say, although I don't have formerly nicotine-stained hands. Mass shootings, a couple just last year. Brooklyn subway, all right, big city area, but Iowa nightclub, Arkansas car show, Vegas hookah bar, a Virginia hookah bar. So we need to remember that terrorism can strike anytime, any place. Like the Amtrak between Missouri, St. Louis, and Chicago that was derailed. We don't hear anything about that. And again, there was a truck there that caused the derailment. Where was the driver? Where did he go? We don't hear anything about that. That may have indeed been terrorism. East Palestine, of course, was not terrorism, but terrorists can easily upend and derail a chemical train in hopes of creating toxic fumes. And my Tulsa chapter predicted that that indeed was going to happen. At any rate, this is just going to be a very brief opening segment. I'm going to get into the interview with Ed, and it will be followed with others. Thank you for tuning in today, and please have thoughts and prayers to those who are still suffering, the first responders due to all the toxicity of everything down around ground zero, and those who survived dealing with post-traumatic stress form of survivor's guilt. Let them know they are in our thoughts and prayers. Hello, I am now joined with Ed Bonderenka of WAAM Radio show Your American Heritage, which in part ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast is a little modeled after, or certainly influenced by. And again, it's WAAM Radio, WAAM, Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You could go to whamradio.com and hit the listen live link anywhere in the world. And like I joked with Phil and Bruce, we recorded for last week's show, it's the WAAM, not the wake me up before you go kind, right? You You know me, I can never resist a bad pun. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about radio and why you got a show on WAAM.
Well, you're talking about ChristiTutionalist. For instance, my guest today, the show I just wrapped up with William J. Federer. Basically, I decided to let him preach today. He's a historian, expert, and he just gave us the basis of our nation and its spiritual heritage in the Great Awakening up till today, and the necessity of having Christians stand up for their faith and stand up to the government to keep things real. The responsibility they have, the responsibility the pastors have, not to just sit it out, but to get engaged. Or else, what does Adams have to say? He says it's not fit government for other than religious people. Well, it doesn't do any good if you don't put your religion to the test and actually shift it into gear and nudge the government to where it should go, especially today.
I forget exactly how he quoted things, but indeed, I have been saying for decades, you shall be known by your fruits, right? You shall reap what you sow, or like the Rush tune says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. If you don't sow fruit, you're stuck consuming the poison someone else has sown, right? You have to be involved. And I wish I could quote him from the show we just listened to, but it lost my mind. And he was saying the same thing, but quoting different scriptures and different motivation.
The Adams quote is, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
Yeah, and as he was saying during the show, sitting back, like I just said, then that you're somehow aloof and above it all, and you're more pure, right? Holier than thou nonsense. You reap the whirlwind of what others sow. Jesus never meant for that to happen. Jesus was active. Jesus was involved. He overturned the money changers' table in the temple. What are you doing? Why are you allowing this? You can't just sit and allow these things to happen.
He called them out. He called the Pharisees out for leaving the nation of Israel spiritually bereft, for one. They were in it for self-centered motives and not serving the people anymore, as was their mandate.
Exactly. And render unto Caesar doesn't mean render all our Christian duties to Caesar, right? You've got to be involved. Be your brother's keeper means charity from us, from our heart. That means not only giving of ourselves and our own money and of our time, that includes government to make sure things work. Like I often talk about LBJ, I discussed it with Bruce and Phil, the Great Society, destroying the family and all that, creating the welfare state, which is unconstitutional. That has nothing to do with our founders saying, promote the general welfare. Individual federal welfare checks are not promoting the general welfare. They are creating dependency to buy votes with.
Exactly. In fact, William Wagner's group, Salt and Light Global, taken from the scripture. You're supposed to be salt and light. That means to the culture. That doesn't mean within the boundary of your church meeting. Not at all. Or, your neighbors. You're supposed to be preserving of the culture, of the Christian values that have been passed on to you. It's a mandate from God.
Right. Avoiding the often overused term preaching to the choir. But that's exactly right. That's valid. You're not really practicing full set of Christianity. Like, I love how people love to quote Matthew, thou shalt not judge, but stop there. Ignore the rest of the line and ignore the other dozen scriptures that tell you, yes, you judge biblically. And like Allison Lorkowski, you vote biblically. You have to be involved. You don't be a hypocrite. You judge on the same set of standards, the same biblical standards. You have to hold yourself and others too, but final judgment is for the Lord, right? It should be condemn not, lest ye be condemned, really, right? I do not condone your lifestyle, but it's not up to me to condemn your lifestyle. Yes?
Exactly. I'm blessed that you mentioned Allison Lurkowski. She's moved on to her place with the Lord, but actually she's the one who actually was, she brought William Federer to this state for a tour. And that's how I had the opportunity to meet him in person and have him stay overnight in my house and have dinner and breakfast with him. And it's a blessing. And I owe it all to Allison. I'll thank her again when I see her in heaven, but I want to postpone that time.
Okay. I don't have long with you today.
Oh, that's good. So, I'm on the words. I'm all talked out for today.
Well, I haven't had, since you co-host with Pastor Rick on Moment of Clarity, and then your show at 2:00, his at 1, yours at 2 Eastern time immediately follows. So you've done a lot of talking. I have already today too, and I've got to get off this to do Savaged Unfiltered live next. So I'm going to be doing more talking, but this will air right before 9/11, and it's important to remember that, like Memorial Day, though, is an official holiday, 9/11 is not an official holiday, at least not yet.
It's a sacred day.
Yeah, it's not a holiday to, like the 4th of July, to celebrate our freedoms and our rights, which I've discussed on this show and in my articles the last few weeks. We're letting erode and escape, like Franklin, a republic if you can keep it. Another reason why we as Christians have to be involved. We're not keeping it because we're allowing it to erode away. It's a fond, somber remembrance. Your thoughts?
Well, like as I said, there was a sacred day, and actually the etymology of the word holiday comes from holy day, and holy means to be set apart or sacred, set apart. It's not a holiday for fireworks, but it's a day set apart for remembrance, a day of memorial.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Right. The derivative of holiday is holy day. And that's, again, the erosion of not just the republic, the erosion of the language that has been lost. Holiday has just become mattress day sales, right?
Beach day.
Beach day. Exactly. We've lost, and I've discussed that many times, the warping and twisting of language. We've lost the language. We're allowing the left to not just rewrite history, but rewrite our verbiage, and we can't have an honest conversation if we don't have a common set of terms to have that discussion based upon, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Good talking to you. Thanks
it was great talking to you, Ed. Thanks for stopping by, bringing in ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, first ever guest, pre-recorded Thursday, June 29th, 2023, as this may appear on later seasons. I may bring it as a flashback. So please welcome my friend, Pastor Robert Thibodeau. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Joseph, it's a blessing, man. I appreciate your invite, and it is a blessing to be able to come on and share with your audience.
Thank you. Thank you again as I joked before, I know you're busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, as the saying goes, so a little off script there. Rather than me reading dry introductory bio, how about you give us your background beyond the obvious? You're a real man. Continue to identify as a male you've always been. No threat to Biden cabinet buffoon Sam Britton will want to steal your luggage. There are no dresses or pumps in there, right?
That's right.
And tell about the many irons you had in the fire, including 3 active podcasts over the last couple of decades.
All right. Well, quick background. I did 12 years in the military as a cavalry officer. Got out, had my own business for a while, decided I got bored with it and became a cop. And that was my new career choice. Now, I was born again during this time frame and went to ministry school and completed all that. And then 2007, I was injured on the job and had to go through a bunch of surgery, 32 different medical procedures. Over the course of that time, they started talking about, we may have to make you retire. And that's when I got praying, Lord, I'm getting too old to keep starting this stuff over. What does he want me to do? And it was just so clear, began a weekly 30-minute online radio program. Now, you have to understand my background and my technology capabilities at that time.
Of the lack thereof, right? Yeah.
I had to have help checking my email account. Okay. And, so this was like way over my head. But I was recovering from a knee surgery, couldn't walk around that much. So I'm sitting in front of the computer screen to say, well, let me go to the great savior, Google, and figure out how to do it. And my first radio program was me talking on a flip cell phone, remember them? And a free website. Called talkshoe.com.
Kind of like my low-key ChristiTutionalist podcast beginning. Cheating using Zoom. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. Use what you can work, right? Well, I started getting a following, and I was like, oh, okay, wow, this is kind of cool. And about 6 months into that, I got approached by a Christian AM radio station conglomerate based in South Carolina. They said, we heard your podcast. I didn't know what a podcast was, let alone that I had one. And they said, we heard your podcast. Would you like to be on nationwide AM radio? And I'm thinking, oh, yeah. I mean, this is the Lord's doing. It's marvelous in my eyes, right? Catch was I had to pay for it. Just little tiny details you learn as you go. But the normal retirement process for our department was 12 to 18 months for a medical retirement. So I said, okay, I'll do this for a year and, use this as the baseline and the platform, get it built up, and then I'll retire, and that'll be what I do. Well, about 6 months in, and it was expensive. But 6 months into that, I got a letter in the mail one day that said, congratulations on your retirement. Now you're living on half your income. And I still got this big radio budget. So I knew I wasn't going to renew that contract. So about that time, the Lord put on our heart to start a Christian online radio station and to make it so affordable, no pastor could not say no. He gave me a list of 10 things that we were supposed to put on the radio, have on a radio station, have the capability of doing. So I went back to the great savior, Google, to try and find one already doing it that I could pattern myself after. Nobody was doing it. This would have been 2009. Nobody was doing it. Nobody. Show you when this was at. iHeartRadio had just started, and they were only doing music. Right? So
I know the time frames. Our memories play tricks on us. We think these things have been around for decades, and they haven't. I'm a former IT guy. I go back to the 300 baud dial-up modem days, before the internet actually existed. And even that really wasn't all that long ago.
That's right. Yeah, my first computer was a Tandy 286, and I crashed that. So there you go. But we couldn't find anybody to pattern ourselves after. So my son-in-law, he's an IT guy, so he said, let's build it, and we did, and we tested it all out. Worked great. And we launched what's now Evangelism Radio on October 4th, 2010. It's been going 24/7 ever since. We've got major ministries. If I mentioned their names, you'd know who they were. We got some of them on there. We got, we cater to the smaller churches and ministries. And we've been going 24/7 now. This is our 13th year. We were rated at one time #1 in the world by shoutcast.com for Christian talk. And the podcast, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, that's a podcast #1. Evolved out of that just for me as a way to interview our broadcasters. It wasn't really a priority at that time. And then I got introduced by a publicist to a Christian author, such as yourself. And, all of a sudden the total dynamics of the podcast changed. We started doing authors, recording artists, CEOs, nonprofit leaders, business owners, online coaches, across the gamut, but all of them are Christian, and that's what they have in common, but their stories are all different and what they're doing is different. And that podcast has taken off like a rocket. We just recently, about a week or two ago, went over 200,000 downloads. We're rated in the top 0.5% now of all podcasts worldwide with that podcast. And I started a faith-based business podcast just to help people promote their faith-based business. It could be, think Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, it's a secular business. They're Christian themed, and that's what the owners, that's what they focus on is their faith. It's a secular setting. Well, those are the types of businesses we promote on the Faith-Based Business Podcast. And then I did a lot of interviews with all this stuff. The COVID pandemic really started it off. And then everything you see happening in the news right now.
Yeah, I want to interrupt for a second about you were saying about the Christian base, but still in the secular world operations. Yeah, because boycotts are in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bud Light and Target and all that. We also need to boycott, right?
That's
we
right.
need to know there is an app called Align Us I'm on. I'm also on Mammoth Nation, right? Christian or conservative sites to let you know who are the fellow Christian or conservative businesses to promote. I'm sorry, I wanted to interject that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bonderenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on WAAM Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
No, that's fine, because that's the type of stuff we need to support. And that's the purpose of the Faith-Based Business Podcast. Put that out there, let people know this is safe. And then, like I say, with all the stuff going on in the news, we start getting a lot of guests coming on, minister guests talking about prophecy. So we started this year Revelation Warning Podcast, and that podcast has just taken off. I mean, we're at like 50,000 downloads.
And thank you for having me on both Kingdom and Revelations. Yeah,
that's right. and like I said, that is a very popular topic right now, end times and prophecy and stuff like that. And it reflects because of the amount of traffic we're getting on that. And so those are the three platforms that I publish on almost every week. Sometimes we may not have a guest for the faith-based one, so it goes 2 weeks or something like that. But as soon as we get them in, we put it out there. The Kingdom Crossroads podcast publishes almost daily, 5 days a week. Sometimes it's 4.
Now that's a lot.
We just published also a couple weeks ago, episode 1,300, and all of them are interviews. Did over 900 interviews.
Yeah, I was planning originally to just do monthly podcast updates, but so much happens, and I write for TheLibertyBeacon.com every week, every Saturday, so it's easy to know I will have material weekly based on that, so I upgraded. But again, thank you for joining me back to the script. Again, thank you for joining me as the first ever ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast show guest. Not an interview, but I am very intrigued by your recently started FaithCasters project.
Amen.
And really want you to be able to share that with my audience and be able to promote it. Please give us the outline and hopes for that, as well as the Podcasters for Christ projects.
Okay. Well, the Podcasters for Christ, I'll do that first because it's easiest. I had all these different podcasts, and because of my length of time in podcasts, I've been asked a lot about, I want to start a podcast. How do I do it? And so, I kept getting asked the same questions over and over again.
That's just like with me in interviews for Terror Strikes coming soon to a city near you, like you did. Come back and talk about writing and publishing. Hence, how to write a book and get it published. Hence, tips and techniques followed.
So what we did, we put together a coaching program, and it's called podcast-training.com. And then we have Faithcasters coming on board, and the interviews, the radio station. And one day the Lord said, and my marketing budget, which is very limited, I was splitting it up amongst all these things. And one day the Lord said, how many businesses are you running for? I said, 4. And he said, why don't you put them all under one hood, promote that, and then people can pick which one they want to go to. And I'm like, hey, you're pretty smart.
You are now a conglomeration, right?
That's right. So Podcasters for Christ is our main hood. And you go there, and then you can pick where you want to go, whether it's for training, radio, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, or now Faithcasters, which just launched. Faithcasters. One of the things that helped me grow our podcast to where I'm at is I subscribe to many different, basically newsletter type things that promote podcasters. But you had to pay for each one, and got grandfathered in on many of them. So my fee is like $5 a month. I'm paying like $30 a month for all of them. I went back when we're getting ready to launch Faithcasters just to see what new people be charged. And some of them are $40, $45 a month. So, I was like, wow, okay, I'm glad I did it when I did it, But we wanted to make a platform like that just for Christians, because all these other ones, you're lumped into what's called religion and spirituality. So you're in there with all the different faiths, including Islam and Buddhism and Confucianism.
Probably even Scientology, which I would not call a religion if my life depended on it.
Sometimes I'm listed right in between two Wiccans, stuff like that. So I decided, the Lord decided that we were going to go ahead and create our own Christian newsletter to connect podcasters and guests together. And our tagline, for Faithcasters is great Christian podcasters connecting with great Christian guests. And that's what we do. We launched it just recently, and it's already starting to get some traction. And, I'm excited about it. And we kept the prices very low. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can go to the website, FaithCasters.org, and you can check it all out. Use Joseph's link to get in there. He's going to put the link in the show notes below, so it's easy for you to do. Just click it and you'll be taken right there. And then, the newsletter itself is free. You don't have to join anything to get the information.
Okay? A very important point. And then there are other paid things.
Yeah, if you want to add yourself to our listings, that's what you pay for. But if you would just want to get the newsletter, because we feature, several hosts and several guests looking for hosts in each issue, and it'll be published bi-weekly starting off. And you just go there, register for the newsletter. It comes into your email box every 2 weeks. And on the opposite weeks, we're going to highlight one podcaster, one guest, to send that out.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Every week.
But as to signing up for the paid items, buy now while it's, less expensive, right? Because you, like everybody, we all start off with our pricing lower to start the traffic, to start the buzz, to hopefully get word of mouth. And then as time grows and our costs also go up, we have to adjust up our pricing to others. So get on board now. Get on board the train before you have to try to jump on at 100 miles an hour. But I am curious, do you know or had the chance to work with Rabbi Kurt Schneider, a Messianic rabbi and creator of Discovering the Jewish Jesus podcast and part of the Jews for Jesus crew, for those who have not heard of him? I copied you on an email I sent him just the other day, as Schneider happens to be somewhat of a neighbor to me. Well, not the next city over, nor even the next county over. Rabbi Schneider is indeed a fellow Michiganian nearby, and I've reached out to him wanting to work with him on his Taking the Rainbow Back. All 7 of the colors from the 6-color fake rainbow alphabet mafia, as I call them. And I like to say, I have gay and lesbian friends. We get along just fine. They're the old school tolerance and acceptance crowd versus today's rainbow alphabet mafia, as I call them, who are gay-tivists engaging in gay-tivism. There is a major difference from that of just wanting tolerance and acceptance, love me as I am. Final judgment is between them and the Lord, not me and them, right? And an advocate engaging in grooming and wanting to legalize pedophilia. Completely different. Completely different. Amen. But anyway, that have tried to co-opt and corrupt the rainbow message. In fact, I'm wearing, if you can see it, let me move this out so I can make sure I got it on camera, the shirt, including the Genesis 9:16 and Revelations 4:3 biblical references on the shirt. I am hoping that the two of you together may be able to cross-promote, as we're doing right now today, as I am trying to help us cross-promote together. Your thoughts?
Amen. Absolutely. I just, like this past couple weeks have been a little busy with the launch.
There's that one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest
thing
again.
but we're he's on my list of people to contact.
Yeah. I mean, he's Christ-centered, so I think he fits in and would work. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. It's going a little longer than I anticipated to try to stay within my parameters of things. But thanks for your time today. I appreciate you taking the time to be my first ever guest. And again, hopefully down the road, we'll probably use this as the flashback segment when there's a larger audience to see it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
WAAM Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Therone X. On the Edge, Therone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bonderenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to WAAM podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Therone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on WAAM Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.
Amen. Well, be sure they click the link down below in the show notes and get signed up for the newsletter.
All right. Take care, brother. God bless. I am now joined by a guest, Roger Landry of TheLibertyBeacon.com. And since most of my pieces, 99.9% of the ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, will be based on a corresponding same-day release at TheLibertyBeacon.com, I thought we'd have Roger come on and talk a little bit about, before I have Roger take over and tell us about himself. If you're looking on my @JLeonardDetroit YouTube or Rumble channel, you will see the lovely, beautiful tropical beach background, but and I display that ironically because neither my guest nor I have the time or money to get out to a nice tropical beach. But welcome to the show, Roger. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, the impetus behind The Liberty Beacon?
Well, to start it all off with, both of my children were born in Hawaii. And I lived there for 4 years because I was stationed there. And scenes like what's behind you right now were my front yard. So, yes, I do miss them quite a bit. And what was the impetus behind the Liberty Beacon Project? Roger Landry worked for the military-industrial complex, or was in the military for a total of about 30 years. If you stop to consider that I had a great job and I got paid well and I traveled the world, I've got over 1.5 million air miles under my belt, and I thought everything was great until somebody asked me to step back and look. Something I had never done before. Something that a vast majority of this planet today is tied down under, and that is we are so confused, so distracted by the manufactured crises going on all around us that we don't see the big picture. We can't. But if we stood back and looked, what we would see is that a lot of these things are connected, and they're connected through what some would like to call the global elites, okay? What has been happening for over 200 years. This isn't something that started yesterday. The reason it's in overdrive today is because of modern technology. What is the Liberty Beacon, and why have I been rambling on? How do I get to the Liberty Beacon with all of this? It's this simple. I finally stood back after working for the very people I push back hard against today and took a look at the big picture and realized where I actually fit, not where I'd been conditioned to feel I actually fit. From that day forward, I have been running the Liberty Beacon Project, which has a website in France called Europe Reloaded, a website in the UK called UK Reloaded, a website in Australia which should be relaunched probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks 2 websites in the United States, The Liberty Beacon and The Falling Darkness, and our newest endeavor, which I'm very proud of, which is TLB Talk, a social media platform that allows you to say what needs to be said. So if I had to give you one word, and this is going to make you laugh, I know it is. If I had to give you one word for why for the last 15 years I have been beating myself up to build a global network to where people can actually know and share the truth, the answer would have to be penance.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that. I am certainly glad that it's there. As you know, I used to write for Red State and had a falling out with them. So I've been writing for bforeignsnews.com. And, you know, any site is only as good as those on it, right? Before It's News has got some great people and it's got some kooks. I'd say the same about Red State, right? And depending on one's own perspective, you're going to find that anywhere. So you can't attack a site. You've got to seek out those who you know are giving you the facts and evidenced truth versus the delusional bubble false narratives of the left. Generally, not entirely. Some on the right are delusional snowflakes. You're not going to get me to say Republicans are great. They ain't.
Wait a minute. Who keyed the word fascistocrats?
Yeah, that was me.
Somebody named Joseph.
The fascistocrats are still far worse than even the rhinos are, but the rhinos are still bad and gotta go. And you know I push back. I know you use the uniparty label. I like to push back on that and say, no, there's a lot of us, including me, fighting hard in the Republican Party to defeat rhinos, CINOs, and fascistocrats. There's just not enough of us as delegates in there and fighting depending on the state. So the rhinos, the CINOs, the fascistocrats are all deep state establishment elites in my mind. I still like to make the distinction the Republican Party can be reclaimed and made great again.
I have no doubt about that. I really don't. And if you start to consider that about 80% of what is beat into your brain over and over again by mainstream media night after night after night, we who have had the patience to stick around and look, see 2 and 2.5 years later, oh, we might have been wrong about that. Oh, you know, maybe we were a little too quick when we said that. Oh, we really didn't mean that, but that's what the implications were at the time. Yeah. Why do you think we have TLB Talk? And talk.
Yeah, and times do change. I mean, things aren't the same, obviously, today as they were 25 years ago or 50 years ago. Unfortunately, that Overton window does seem to keep moving more and more towards tyranny, which is just human nature, psychology, a laziness, or a sense of entitlement. All these, you know, what's on TV? Yeah, exactly. What's on TV? I can't be bothered. But yet, as I call myself a ChristiTutionalist, you reap what you sow. If you sow nothing, like the Rush song says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And you're forced to then eat the rotten fruit you've allowed others to sow if you do nothing.
If you do not involve yourself in the critical decisions that will make all of the difference, not only to your life going forward, but to the most important generation on this planet today, our children. If we do not step up soon, and I mean very soon, because I am watching tyranny accelerating globally, but then they have no choice. They realize that they've gone way too far. If they don't continue forward now, they will be admitting all the mistakes they made, and they will be losing a lot of ground. The only problem with that is they're going forward with a population that is a lot more awake and aware than what they expected or hoped for.
Yeah, more and more people, and I hope I'm helping.
We are a part of it. Yes.
Yeah, through TheLibertyBeacon.com and now my podcast to awaken those from their woke stupor. And to kind of close things out and wrap them up, let's tell people about your podcast too.
Well, I have two. I have one on RBN, and that is basically just TLB Talk Radio. And that one's on Sundays from noon to 1 Central. And I have another one on Shake and Wake Radio Live. And that's on Wednesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. Central. And these are two great platforms that are partnered with the Liberty Beacon Project to allow us to say the things we know we need to say. But, hey, the Liberty Beacon Project, the entire project, years of posts on Twitter, they shut us down just before Musk took over. We have over 200,000 people following us in all of our groups and stuff on Facebook. We're lucky if a dozen people see what we post each day now.
Shadow banning, yeah.
This is why we are here. This is why we welcome people like you, Joseph, because what you bring to the table is wake the hell up and look. It's either that or don't try to defend your stupidity.
And I try to be careful. I know. One tinyurl.com/redpillstrategy where, I try not to go off into the 5G weeds. I have a friend, Diana, love her to death, but she'll walk up to anyone on the street and just start spewing about 5G. And what are you going to get? People rolling their eyes and walking away.
And pushing back. Yep.
Yeah. If I can't get them to buy into the easily evidenced Hunter Biden laptop, how am I going to get them to buy into Pizzagate? So you got to be careful what you say to who, right?
Wait. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Is there something wrong with Hunter Biden's laptop?
Well, and I was banned on Twitter before Elon took over too, so I'm still banned trying to get back on. I do have Jay Leonard Author, which has very little following that I just started up again, starting to rebuild, not spending a whole lot of time, focusing efforts more on things like this. But yeah, I mean, we've got to, I'm not saying we can't talk about those things and shouldn't amongst people who have a level that can handle it, right?
And in a place that will tolerate it.
Yeah. Know your audience, as the saying goes, right?
Yes.
If you walk into a grocery store and lead with whatever, Pizzagate, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to effectively win anybody over. And what good is it for us to just spew to the abyss if we can't potentially bring some over? Anyway, with that, I think I'm going to close it out. This was just meant to be a brief, quick introduction about the importance of TheLibertyBeacon.com. And before I forget, I want to remind, because I've been caught in this mistake a few times, it's not Liberty Beacon, it is TheLibertyBeacon.com.
TLB.
Right? Yeah.
TLB Project.
Right, because there's some other group out there that is not the Liberty Beacon, and you want to go to TheLibertyBeacon.com and TLB Talk. Thank you for having tuned into ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. Please tune in to Savage Unfiltered Podcast, of which I am a co-host, and be sure to check out more about today's discussion at TheLibertyBeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. In addition to seeing the corresponding TheLibertyBeacon.com piece referenced in any episode of ChristiTutionalist Podcast, see to the show transcript on podcast platforms that provide access to it, like Buzzsprout at tinyurl.com/ChristiTutionalist for additional bonus material there in the transcript. Thank you. Take care. God bless.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.